In the sprawling landscapes of rural Montana, wildlife rehabilitator Jake Thornton had seen his share of unique animals, but none quite like Oliver. Oliver was no ordinary bobcat kitten, rescued at just a few weeks old. After losing his mother, he grew up in the care of Jake Thornton, a wildlife rehabilitator who quickly discovered Oliver's unusual fondness for soccer balls. From playful taps in Jake's backyard to eager chases across the grass, Oliver found joy in every bounce and roll of the ball. One sunny Saturday, Jake brought Oliver along to his niece's soccer match at the local field. Enthralled by the game and distracted momentarily, Jake didn't notice when Oliver slipped away, chasing after a stray ball rolling towards an adjacent practice area. When Jake turned back, Oliver had vanished. Panic quickly turned to amusement as Jake heard laughter erupt from the main soccer pitch. There, amid whistles and amused shouting, was Oliver, chasing enthusiastically after the soccer ball, right in the middle of the ongoing match. What happens when a wild animal decides it just wants to play ball? This is the remarkable true story of Oliver, the soccer-obsessed bobcat who interrupted a match and captured hearts with 4 paws, spotted fur, and an inexplicable love for the soccer game. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dewy grass of Jake Thornton's modest backyard in rural Montana. At 53, Jake's weathered face bore the lines of someone who had spent most of his life outdoors. His career as a wildlife rehabilitator had begun 15 years earlier, after a chance encounter with an injured bald eagle had changed the trajectory of his life. Since then, his small ranch on the outskirts of Pine Creek had become known as a haven for injured wildlife, a place where animals could heal before returning to their natural habitats. But in all his years of rehabilitation work, Jake had never encountered a creature quite like Oliver. The tiny bobcat kitten had arrived at Jake's doorstep in a cardboard box 3 months earlier, brought by a local park ranger who had found the orphaned animal wandering alone near a hiking trail. The ranger explained that the mother had likely been killed by poachers, an all-too-common occurrence in the area despite strict conservation laws. Poor little guy was crying something fierce, Ranger Miller had told Jake, peering down at the trembling ball of spotted fur. Figured if anyone could help him, it would be you. Jake had taken in many orphaned bobcats over the years, but from the beginning, Oliver proved different. While most wild kittens remained skittish and defensive despite his gentle care, Oliver displayed an unusual curiosity and affection that bordered on domestic. Jake knew enough about wildlife rehabilitation to understand that such behavior could complicate Oliver's eventual release back into the wild. But he couldn't help forming a bond with the small feline who purred contentedly whenever Jake entered the room. "You're supposed to be afraid of me, you know," Jake would tell Oliver as the kitten climbed onto his lap during their evening routine. "That's how you stay alive out there." But Oliver showed no signs of developing the weariness that would ensure his survival in the wilderness. Instead, he grew more attached to Jake. With each passing day, the bobcat's most peculiar trait, however, emerged one crisp autumn afternoon when Jake's nephew Tyler came to visit, bringing along his soccer ball. At just 10 years old, Tyler was. Soccer-obsessed, constantly practicing his dribbling skills even when indoors, much to his mother's dismay. When Tyler kicked the black and white ball across Jake's backyard, Oliver's reaction was immediate and astonishing. The young bobcat froze, his tufted ears perked forward, his gaze locked on the rolling sphere with an intensity that made Jake laugh out loud. Before either human could react, Oliver had streaked across the yard in a blur of spotted fur, pouncing on the ball with all four paws extended. The ball was nearly as large as he was, but that didn't deter him. Oliver batted at it, tumbled over it, and chased it with unbridled joy when Tyler gently kicked it again. "Would you look at that?" Jake had murmured, watching in amazement as the wild animal played like a domestic kitten. "I've never seen anything like it." From that day forward, Oliver's obsession with soccer balls became the defining quirk of his personality. Jake purchased several balls of various sizes, discovering that Oliver preferred the standard black and white pattern over solid colors. Every afternoon they would spend at least an hour in the backyard, Jake rolling the ball across the grass while Oliver chased, pounced, and occasionally performed acrobatic leaps that defied feline gravity. "You know you're not a house cat, right?" Jake would remind Oliver, who paid no attention to such distinctions. As far as the bobcat was concerned, the ball was prey, and he was a mighty hunter, albeit one who never actually wanted to damage his kill. As weeks passed into months, Jake faced a growing dilemma. Standard rehabilitation protocol dictated that Oliver should be gradually prepared for release back into the wild. Yet, the bobcat showed no inclination toward independence, and his unusual behavior made Jake question whether he could survive on his own. After consulting with several wildlife experts, Jake reluctantly accepted that Oliver might be one of the rare cases better suited to educational programs than full release. Some animals just imprint too strongly. His colleague, Marissa from the Montana Wildlife Center, had explained it happens. He could become an ambassador, help people understand why protecting bobcats is important. The idea made sense, but the licensing process would take months. In the meantime, Oliver continued to grow, his kitten Fluff giving way to the sleek coat of an adolescent bobcat. His soccer skills improved, too. He could now expertly maneuver the ball between his paws, occasionally sending it rolling back toward Jake as if passing to a teammate. It was Tyler who first suggested bringing Oliver to one of his soccer games. "The team would freak out, Uncle Jake. Oliver could be our mascot." Jake had laughed and dismissed the idea, explaining the regulations about wild animals in public spaces. But the seed was planted, and when Tyler's coach organized a charity exhibition match to raise funds for the local animal shelter, Jake found himself reconsidering. "It's for a good cause," Tyler's mother, Sarah, pointed out during their weekly phone call. "And you said yourself that Oliver needs to get used to being around people if he's going to be in educational programs. This could be a controlled way to introduce him to crowds." After securing special permission from both the event organizers and the local wildlife authority, Jake's respected reputation helping smooth the bureaucratic process, he agreed to bring Oliver to the match in a secure travel crate. The plan was simple. Oliver would remained safely contained throughout the event, visible to curious onlookers, but unable to cause any mischief. The Saturday of the charity match dawned, bright and clear, perfect weather for soccer. Jake carefully loaded Oliver's crate into his weathered pickup truck, along with a small duffel bag containing water bottles, Bobcat appropriate snacks, and at Tyler's insistence, a miniature soccer ball that Oliver could play with inside his enclosure. He'll get jealous watching all those balls he can't chase, Tyler had explained with the solemn wisdom of a 10-year-old. The local high school soccer field was already buzzing with activity when Jake arrived. Parents set up folding chairs along the sidelines, while volunteers arranged tables for refreshments and the silent auction items. Tyler's team, the Pine Creek Cougars, warmed up on one half of the field, their blue jerseys bright against the green grass. Their opponents, the Riverside Rangers, occupied the other half in their red uniforms. Jake found a spot at the edge of the spectator area, partly shaded by a tall oak tree. He placed Oliver's crate on the ground beside his chair, angling it so the Bobcat could watch the field. Oliver seemed unusually calm, despite the unfamiliar surroundings, his keen eyes following the movement of the various soccer balls with predatory focus. That's a real Bobcat, a little girl with pigtails had wandered over, her eyes wide with wonder. Sure is, Jake replied with a smile. His name is Oliver. He's so cute. The girl crouched down, keeping a respectful distance from the crate. Why do you have him? Jake launched into his well-practiced educational speech about wildlife conservation, explaining how Oliver had been orphaned and why he couldn't return to the wild. Soon, a small crowd had gathered, listening attentively as Jake described the challenges facing Bobcat populations throughout Montana. Oliver, meanwhile, remained unusually still, almost as if he knew he was being discussed. The crowd around Jake's chair had just begun to disperse when the referee's whistle signaled the start of the match. Jake turned his attention to the field, searching for Tyler among the young players. He spotted his nephew taking position as a midfielder, his face set in an expression of fierce concentration. The first few minutes of the game passed without incident. Jake occasionally glanced down at Oliver, who watched the game with such intensity that Jake couldn't help chuckling. Taking notes, buddy, he murmured. What happened next occurred so quickly that Jake would later have trouble recounting the exact sequence of events. He had looked up to watch Tyler receive a pass, turning away from Oliver for no more than 30 seconds. When he looked back down, the latch on Oliver's crate was open and the Bobcat was gone. Panic surged through Jake's chest. He leapt to his feet, scanning the area around his chair. Oliver, he called, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing heart. Had someone opened the crate? Had Oliver somehow figured out the mechanism? A collective gasp from the crowd turned Jake's attention back to the field. There, streaking across the grass with remarkable speed, was a familiar spotted form. Oliver had somehow not only escaped his crate, but had made it onto the playing field, heading straight for the rolling soccer ball. Oh no, Jake breathed, already moving. Oliver. The game had ground to a confused halt. Players from both teams stood frozen, staring in disbelief as a wild bobcat, albeit a young one, charged toward the ball. The referee blew his whistle frantically, but the sharp sound only seemed to energize Oliver further. With a graceful leap that would have impressed any feline aficionado, Oliver pounced on the ball, his paws wrapping around it as he tumbled forward in a rolling motion that carried him several feet across the grass. The initial shock from the crowd gave way to something else. Laughter, because there was something undeniably comical about the sight of a bobcat treating a regulation soccer ball like the world's largest catnip toy, batting it with his paws and chasing after it with single-minded determination. Jake reached the edge of the field, hesitating as he assessed the situation. Oliver didn't appear stressed or aggressive. Quite the opposite. The bobcat was in his element, completely fixated on the ball as he nudged it across the grass with his nose. "Is that a lynx?" one of the Riverside players asked, taking a cautious step backward. "Bobcat," the referee corrected, looking utterly bewildered. "Someone want to explain why there's a bobcat on my field? He's mine. Well under my care," Jake called out, slowly approaching Oliver. "He's orphaned, completely hand-raised. He has a thing for soccer balls." As if to demonstrate this claim, Oliver performed a perfect soccer-style header, bouncing the ball off his forehead before chasing after it with renewed enthusiasm. This elicited a chorus of delighted laughter and even some applause from the spectators. Tyler, recognizing a golden opportunity, jogged over to his uncle. "Can I try something?" he asked, eyes shining with excitement. Before Jake could respond, Tyler had gently tapped the ball with his foot, sending it rolling a few feet away from Oliver. The bobcat reacted exactly as he did during their backyard play sessions, darting after the ball and stopping it with his front paws. When Tyler tapped it again, Oliver repeated the process, creating what looked remarkably like a passing drill between human and feline. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, "it appears we have an unexpected player who wants to join the game. Since this is a charity match for the animal shelter, I think we can allow a brief intermission for this special demonstration." The crowd cheered their approval, and Jake felt his initial panic subsiding. If Oliver was calm, and no one seemed threatened, perhaps this unexpected situation could be salvaged. He caught the referee's eye and received a bemused nod that he interpreted as permission to let the unusual scene play out for a few more minutes. What followed was what the local newspaper would later describe as the most unusual halftime show in Pine Creek history. Tyler, with Jake's guidance, led Oliver through an impromptu display of soccer skills that highlighted the bobcat's remarkable agility and coordination. Oliver chased, pounced, passed, and even performed a move that looked suspiciously like a bicycle kick, all to the delight of the increasingly enthusiastic audience. Parents pulled out phones to record the spectacle. Children pressed against the sidelines for a better view, and even the opposing team's coach was seen wiping tears of laughter from his. For 15 magical minutes, the charity match became secondary to the unexpected animal act taking center field. Eventually, Jake knew it was time to end the show. Using the miniature soccer ball from his duffel bag as enticement, He coaxed Oliver toward him, with gentle calls. "Come on, buddy. That's enough excitement for one day." Perhaps it was the familiar voice. Perhaps Oliver had simply exhausted himself with his athletic display, but the bobcat trotted obediently to Jake's side, allowing himself to be picked up and cradled like an oversized house cat. As Jake carried Oliver off the field, the crowd erupted into applause and cheers. The announcer's voice boomed across the field. "Let's hear it for Oliver the soccer bobcat and his handler, Jake Thornton from Pine Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation." The referee approached as Jake secured Oliver back in his crate, this time double-checking that the latch was properly fastened. "That was unexpected," the man said, shaking his head in amazement. "But I have to say, in 20 years of officiating, I've never seen anything like it. That cat's got better ball control than some of my players." Jake apologized profusely for the interruption, but the referee waved it off. "Are you kidding? We just raised triple our usual amount in donations." People were throwing money at the collection boxes during that little. The shelter director is beside herself with joy. It was true. By the time the actual soccer match resumed, the donation tables were overflowing with contributions and volunteers were scrambling to empty the collection boxes to make room for more. In the days that followed, Oliver's impromptu soccer demonstration became the talk of Pine Creek. Local news covered the story, complete with video footage that someone had uploaded to social media. Jake's phone rang constantly with interview requests and more significantly inquiries about his wildlife rehabilitation work. "I've never seen this level of interest," Marissa marveled during her visit the following week. "Your waiting list of volunteers has how many names now?" 78, Jake replied, still somewhat dazed by the attention. "And the donation page has raised enough to fund the new rehabilitation enclosures we've been dreaming about for years." Oliver, meanwhile, seemed entirely unaffected by his newfound celebrity status. He continued his daily soccer practice in Jake's backyard, occasionally entertaining carefully supervised groups of school children who came to learn about wildlife conservation. The licensing process for keeping Oliver as an educational ambassador was expedited thanks in part to letters of support from community members who had witnessed his soccer field debut. The Montana Wildlife Authority officially designated Oliver as a wildlife ambassador, allowing Jake to include him in educational programs throughout the state. As for Tyler's soccer team, they adopted a new official mascot, a cartoon bobcat, with a soccer ball, and went on to win their division championship that season. Tyler insisted it was Oliver's influence that had brought them luck. 6 months after the charity match incident, Jake sat on his porch swing, watching as Oliver batted a slightly deflated soccer ball across the yard. The bobcat had nearly reached his full adult size now, his kitten awkwardness replaced by the powerful grace of maturity. Yet he still approached his soccer ball with the same joyful enthusiasm, still purred when Jake scratched behind his ears, still seemed blissfully unaware that he had changed so many lives with his unexpected field invasion. "You know what's funny, Oliver?" Jake said, though the bobcat paid no attention. "I was supposed to be rehabilitating you, but I think you might have rehabilitated all of us a little bit." Oliver paused in his play, looking up at Jake with those intelligent yellow eyes that seemed to understand far more than any wild animal. Then, with deliberate slowness, he nudged the soccer ball toward the porch steps, an invitation to play that Jake, even after a long day, could never refuse. In the golden light of the setting Montana sun, man and Bobcat engaged in their familiar game. The species connected by a spotted ball and the unexpected friendship that had enriched both their lives immeasurably. And though Jake knew that Oliver would never run free in the wilderness as nature had intended, he had found a different kind of freedom, one that brought joy to everyone he encountered, and in the process helped protect the wild cousins he would never meet. For Jake Thornton, wildlife rehabilitator and unexpected soccer coach, that seemed like a victory worth celebrating.